Secretary Noem. If you get cut off before you're able to answer, I'll give you time to finish your answer after the member's 10-minute has run out. Also, at any time, if you need a break, just let me know. And I think we had a request from your office that take a break, maybe of 5 minutes halfway through the meeting, but if you want other breaks, just let us know. And for all the members, there's a 10-minute round of questioning. And I'm pretty liberal. If you got 5 seconds left in your 10 minutes and you start your question before the 5 seconds run out, I'll let you finish your question, but don't extend it into a 5-minute speech because we got to keep pretty much on time here. So once again, I would welcome everybody to the Judiciary Committee's oversight hearing for the Department of Homeland Security. This hearing comes amid a Democrat-led funding shutdown for the Secret Service, for FEMA, for TSA, and the Coast Guard. These agencies are vital to keeping our country safe. The hearing also comes as our military is engaged with Iran, and I offer my prayers and thoughts to our brave servicemen and particularly to those families that have lost loved ones. Now more than ever, I hope the Democrats will decide to end the shutdown. The Trump administration has worked to deport those who don't have a legal basis in our country. Unfortunately, in the process, some DHS officers, migrants, and protesters have felt threatened, were injured, and in very rare instances, even killed. Mistakes have been made. Let's make it clear, one death is too many. But officers should never be threatened or harmed while enforcing our laws. And there is a clear difference between conduct protected by the First Amendment and unlawful obstruction. From my perspective, I believe immigration enforcement and dignity aren't mutually exclusive. Secretary Noem, I look forward to hearing how you're addressing these important issues while continuing the department's mission. And your department's mission is, of course, one of the most challenging in government. The responsibilities of the Department of Homeland Security are immense. Your department operates in a dynamic environment with increased threats against officers. According to DHS, ICE officers have faced an 8,000% increase in death threats. ICE officers have faced a more than 1,300% increase in assaults. Federal law enforcement officers risk their lives finding and arresting criminals. Those criminals have committed murder, sexual assault on women and children, and many have been part of criminal gangs. According to DHS, ICE has arrested tens of thousands of potential national security risks. And ICE has arrested over 1,500 known or suspected terrorists and made over 7,000 gang arrests. Criminals like this destroy the lives of innocent people and have no business being in our country. And many of them are here because of the Biden administration's shameful open border policy. Under your leadership, the department has renewed focus on removing criminals from our neighborhoods. You've also accomplished what many of my Democratic colleagues have said could only be done through new laws. You did it by securing the border, and President Trump did as well. In 2025, Border crossings decreased 93%. According to DHS and Customs and Border Patrol, 0 illegal immigrants were released into the country for 10 consecutive months. And Customs and Border Protection has seized over 617,000 pounds of drugs. For more than a decade, I've done oversight of unaccompanied migrant children. The Biden administration lost track of thousands of children. The Biden administration disgracefully released children improperly vetted sponsors with addresses including gas stations, shopping malls, movie theaters, and even Disney World. That ought to shock the conscience of every American, and we all love children. The Trump administration has located over 145,000 of these children lost by Biden's open border policy. And thank God for finding those children. The department has taken important steps to ensure these children are located and removed from harm. The examples I just shared are results that keep our communities safe. The example, Secretary Noem, you've also been more responsive than your predecessors to a favorite effort of my part, my oversight requests. Now I say how you've been responsive, but to be intellectually honest, from the previous administration, that's a low bar to overcome. In August last year, you provided updates regarding my longstanding Afghanistan evacuee oversight. Since 2021, I've investigated the Biden administration's failure to vet Afghan evacuees. The Biden administration hid vetting failures from the public, and multiple inspectors general have since confirmed these vetting failures. As one example, the Biden administration failed to vet evacuees against all available Defense Department tactical data prior to being paroled. On September the 9th last year, DHS told my office that as of August 12th, 2025, thousands of Operation Allies welcome parolees were potentially national security risks. Records provided by DHS also show the Biden State Department recommended a special immigration visa to Afghan nationals charged with shooting 2 National Guardsmen here in Washington, D.C. According to the Biden State Department, at that time, the terrorist, quote, poses no threat to national security, end of quote. The Biden administration's failure to put this country at risk. Yet, my Democratic colleagues keep trying to ignore that historical fact. You all know I'm a strong supporter of inspectors generals and oversight. Inspector General Kafari has told my office several times that he's been restricted by DHS memo from speaking to certain congressional committees about classified report. That report is about covert testing of the Transportation Security Administration checkpoint security screening. I hosted last year a bicameral, bipartisan, classified briefing with senior DHS officials on that matter to do what I can to bring about transparency. I asked the Inspector General, Kafari, to attend, but he declined, asserting that there was a memo in the department preventing him from doing so. I've also commissioned the Government Accountability Office to review the matter relating to that classified report. Government Accountability Office has said they've been unable to obtain possession of the report and access to relevant Transportation Security Administration personnel. Inspectors General and the Government Accountability Office help bring about transparency, and we all know transparency brings accountability to government. Secretary Noem, if what my office has been told is accurate, these matters should have been ironed out a long time ago. If that isn't accurate, you can tell me. Lastly, after your confirmation, you worked with me to restore 3 whistleblowers to their jobs. Thank you for helping me, but more importantly, thank you for bringing justice to those people, because those whistleblowers faced tremendous retaliation for just reporting what the government should have been doing. They blew the whistle on the government's failure to comply with DNA Fingerprint Act of 2005. By executive order, President Trump has required compliance with that law. Now those whistleblowers have been elevated to supervisory roles. They'll receive back pay to cover years of financial losses. For 2 of them who needed it, their law enforcement credentials, badges, and firearms were reauthorized. Often I say whistleblowers are treated like skunks at a picnic, and these were treated like skunks by the previous administration. That administration failed to do right by these whistleblowers. I appreciate your leadership in righting the wrongs against those patriotic whistleblowers. Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for holding this oversight hearing. After months of excuses and delays from Secretary Noem, we finally gathered together. When I was chair, I restored this committee's long-standing tradition of regular oversight hearings with the Secretary of Homeland Security. Today's hearing is long overdue. We are joined today by friends and family members of individuals currently in ICE detention or who have been deported. I thank them for traveling here today. Their presence is a reminder that the policies implemented by DHS under your leadership, Madam Secretary, have a devastating impact on the lives of real people. Let me also say a word of those who their families have been the victim of violence by immigrants. Although immigrants as a group commit less crime than native-born Americans, there is no excuse for violence, and what you've gone through is a just terrible situation that I will willingly acknowledge. From my point of view, we need an orderly process at the border to start with. And secondly, we should never knowingly allow a dangerous person into this country. And if someone is in this country seeking citizenship and commits a crime, serious crime, they should be asked to leave or incarcerated. Bottom line, there's a way to deal with immigration that is sensible and humane on both sides. More than a dozen years ago, 2 members of this committee, myself and another member, worked with a bipartisan group under Senator John McCain to write a comprehensive immigration law which dealt with many of the issues we've been working on since. It passed in the United States Senate with over 60 votes, bipartisan, supported by business and labor and religious leaders across the board. Unfortunately, the Republican leadership in the House of Representatives refused to take it up. Had we passed that and made it the law of the land, we could have avoided a lot of the terrible things that have occurred since. Madam Secretary, under your leadership, the Homeland Security Department has been devoid of any moral compass or respect for the rule of law. Without hesitation or remorse, DHS agents have wreaked havoc in our cities. I've seen it in the city of Chicago, and acted with unspeakable cruelty against children, immigrant families, and American citizens. This administration's reckless immigration enforcement campaign is creating fear in communities and eroding the foundational tenets of our democracy. Democrats believe that Congress must do its job and rein in ICE abuses by requiring immigration agents to simply follow the same rules as local police. While Republicans claim the DHS shutdown is putting us at risk, the reality is this administration has engaged in mass layoffs of career national security officials and diverted many others from protecting the homeland of the president's mass deportation campaign. This is all while Secretary Noem is sitting on an unprecedented amount of appropriated funds. more than the United States Marine Corps. The Republicans in Congress gave her this and gave her virtual decision-making power in terms of the execution of policies. And she is spending nearly $300 million on a fleet of luxury private jets so she can travel in style. Really? Secretary Noem has repeatedly claimed that the department is arresting the, quote, worst of the worst and making American cities safe. In fact, less than 14% of immigrants arrested during Trump's first year back in office had charges or convictions for violent criminal offenses. Less than 14%, 1 out of 7. Immigration agents arrive in cities without consulting local law enforcement. They roam the streets in paramilitary gear and arrest and detain people based on the color of their skin, their accents, and the language they speak, the infamous Kavanaugh stops. That is not a public safety operation. That is a paramilitary occupation. And Secretary Noem has made excessive force the department's default position. In my home state of Illinois, during the so-called Operation Midway Blitz, agents violently attacked, tackled, arrested, and detained immigrants and citizens. They conducted a military-style raid on an apartment complex, kicking down doors and zip-tying children. A Border Patrol agent shot an American citizen, Miramar Martinez, multiple times, 5 times. She miraculously survived. After the incident, the agent bragged on the internet, 5 shots, 7 holes. And this administration didn't just shoot her 5 times. They called her a domestic terrorist, tried to prosecute her on trumped-up charges that were ultimately withdrawn, and fought the public release of evidence in her case. In Minnesota, your agents shot and killed Renee Good and Alex Preddy, 2 American citizens. And as their families struggle with these horrible tragedies, they had to fight baseless accusations of domestic terrorism from Secretary Noem, the head of the agency responsible for their loved one's death. The department has also translated the president's racist attacks into immigration policy. President Trump has repeatedly called Somali immigrants, and I quote, garbage, and said that he doesn't want immigrants from what he calls, and I'm going to clean this up, S-hole countries. I heard him say that in the Oval Office repeatedly. Secretary Noem responded to what she called, quote, a full travel ban on every damn country that's been flooding our nation with killers, leeches, and entitlement junkies. It just so happens that every country covered by the Trump-Noem ban has a majority non-white population. Earlier this month, the Trump administration deployed Border Czar Tom Homan to Minneapolis, supposedly to end Operation Metro Surge. The president is reading his sinking poll numbers and finally recognized the American people are sick and tired and fed up with this heavily armed, masked secret police agents causing chaos in our cities. But the reality is the administration has not backed down from Stephen Miller's 3,000 person a day arrest quota. Meeting this quota is impossible without continuing indiscriminate enforcement. There simply are not enough of the so-called worst of the worst to do it. ICE agents are even arresting trafficking survivors like Luna, who was abused for years. In February 2025, the Trump DHS found Luna's application for a trafficking visa was bona fide. Today, Luna is still in detention. DHS has launched a cruel scheme to purchase massive warehouses for detaining immigrants, some designed to hold 8,000 people. To put that in perspective, our largest federal prison holds 4,000. Listen to what the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops said about this. The thought of holding thousands of families in massive warehouses should challenge the conscience of every American. Whatever their immigration status, these are human beings created in the image and likeness of God, and this is a moral inflection point for our country. Even with tens of billions of dollars at your disposal, the administration already cannot meet the basic needs of the 65,000 people currently in immigration detention. Detained individuals, including children and infants, are subject to abusive conditions and inadequate medical care. This includes Liam Ramos, the 5-year-old arrested with his father in Minnesota, who became ill in detention, and Amalia, an 18-month-old baby who became so sick with a respiratory illness she was hospitalized for 10 days, only to be returned to detention and denied medication. We have also seen an unprecedented number of deaths in ICE custody. 7 people died last December alone. 9 have died this year. This includes Geraldo Lunas Campos, who was choked to death by guards. This avoidable tragedy was classified as a homicide by the county medical examiner. The Department of Homeland Security's response: try and deport the witnesses as quickly as possible. Secretary Noem and her rogue immigration agents seem to believe they are above the law and accountable only to the president and Stephen Miller's evil vision of a hateful America. Chief Judge Patrick Schultz of Minnesota, a Republican appointee, found that ICE violated at least 96 court orders in Minnesota in January, the month of January alone, which he said was, quote, likely more than some federal agencies have violated in their entire existence. And hundreds of federal judges have ruled more than 4,440 times that ICE is detaining immigrants illegally. That is an extraordinary rebuke from the federal bench. It hasn't stopped there. This department has trampled on the Fourth Amendment, forcibly entering private homes and businesses without judicial warrant. The Trump administration has also punished individuals for exercising their rights to free speech and peaceful protest under the First Amendment. They revoked a student's visa for writing an op-ed in America. In America. They have subpoenaed social media companies for information on Americans who have criticized ICE. ICE agents have found the addresses of peaceful protesters and showed up their homes to intimidate them. Now the administration is even threatening to interfere with our elections. President Trump has suggested that the federal government should nationalize elections. Top Trump ally Steve Bannon recently said, "We're going to have ICE surround the polls. We'll never again allow an election to be stolen," end of quote. Secretary Noem went further, and this is what you said, and I quote, "Make sure that we have the right people voting, electing the right leaders to head this country." And the administration has threatened immigration enforcement surges if state officials do not turn over their voter rolls, and raided an election office in one swing county. We must ask, what is President Trump's endgame for this reign of state-sponsored violence against America's own citizens? History teaches us that immigrants are the first target when an authoritarian regime seeks to erode civil rights and consolidate power. But immigrants are never the last target. And we know that Donald Trump does not respect the constitutional rights of any American, regardless of party. Secretary Noem, this is the first time we've met. I've been on this committee for more than 2 decades. I worked with every one of your predecessors of both political parties. I tried to meet with you before and after your confirmation, but you refused every request. I want to be clear, and you should know this. No official on this side of the rostrum or the other is above the law. You have no right to deploy immigrant agents as a paramilitary force in American cities. You swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. You have an obligation to answer questions posed by the member of this committee so that meaningful accountability can begin for the terror we are witnessing in America every day.
Would you please stand to be sworn? Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give before the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you for that positive response. Please go ahead and give your opening statement.
Kristi Noem, you should be ashamed of yourself. I'm a
No.
former female
Okay.
Well, your agency. FEMA employees should be responding to disasters, not ICE. You should be ashamed of yourself. Your staff say abolish ICE. Your staff say abolish ICE. Your staff say abolish.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the ranking member Senator Durbin as well, and the distinguished members of this committee. I appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you today and talk about the important matters and work that the Department of Homeland Security does every single day. The Department of Homeland Security...
Hey, could maybe pull the microphone closer to you, please?
Okay.
And the red light is on?
Yep, it is.
Okay, proceed.
The Department of Homeland Security was established in the aftermath of 9/11, one of the darkest days in our nation's history. That resulted in the death of nearly 3,000 Americans. The mission of the Department of Homeland Security at that time was just as critical as it is today. We protect our American people, we prevent acts of terrorism, and we defend our homeland. Every action that the Department of Homeland Security takes is guided by that mission and by that responsibility. Thanks to President Trump's leadership and the hard work of the men and women of DHS, our department has delivered historic results and has made our communities safer. Since the start of President Trump's second term, daily encounters along the southwest border declined by 96% compared to the Biden administration's daily average. We've reached the lowest levels ever recorded in U.S. Customs and Border Protection's history. In President Trump's first year, total Border Patrol apprehensions along the southwest border were less than the average of a single month under the Biden administration. For 10 straight months, the Border Patrol has released 0 illegal aliens into the interior of the United States. And in President Trump's historic first year back in office, nearly 3 million illegal aliens have left the United States as a result of the administration's enforcement efforts from following the law. That includes 2.2 million that have voluntarily left and returned back to their home countries, and more than 675,000 detainments and deportations. A majority of the aliens that were arrested by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement have a criminal record and have been charged with or convicted of secondary crimes in addition to their initial crime of being in the United States illegally. During this period, ICE has arrested over 1,500 known and suspected terrorists, more than 7,700 known gang members, many of them that were allowed to come into this country under the Biden administration. We have also reached the lowest murder rate in the last 125 years since that data was tracked. Under President Biden, more than 450,000 unaccompanied alien children went missing or were lost due to the dangerous open border policies that were embraced. Under President Trump, the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Health and Human Services have already located over 145,000 of these children and returned them back to their families and back to people who care about them. And we will not stop until every single one of those children is found. Fentanyl trafficking at the southern border is down. It's been cut by over 56% because of that secure border and the enforcement actions that have been taking there. And that's compared to the same period of time in 2024. The Coast Guard has seized enough cocaine the past year to prevent quantities capable of killing more than 193 million Americans, and it's kept them off of our streets. In fact, total interdiction efforts under the Trump administration have prevented 1.7 billion lethal doses of drugs from killing our next generation of Americans. These results reflect the fact that we are enforcing the laws that Congress has passed. I want to address the dangerous environment that our ICE officers face on the streets today. They are facing a serious and escalating threat as a result of deliberate mischaracterizations of their heroic work and rhetoric that demonizes our law enforcement. DHS has documented an 8,000% increase in death threats against our ICE officers and their families, as well as more than 1,300% increase in assaults while carrying out the lawful enforcement operations that they do every single day. I recognize that members of this committee may hold differing views about immigration policy, but it's important that we distinguish between disagreements over policy and the department's operational responsibility to enforce existing law that has been passed by Congress. It's our duty as a department to defend our homeland. The latest Democrat-led shutdown of DHS is reckless, it's unnecessary, and it undermines the American national security, and it harms the men and women who work at DHS and their families. Despite the House passing a bipartisan, bicameral full-year DHS funding bill, it is Senate Democrats who've chosen not to fund the department and have held this department hostage. As a result, critical national security missions, including border security, immigration enforcement, aviation security, disaster response, cybersecurity, and the protection of critical infrastructure are all being strained. Our ability to provide for a safe and successful World Cup is being hindered as well. More than 100,000 dedicated DHS employees are once again being asked to work without pay for the third time in just 5 months. At a time when we've produced the most secure border in history and removed nearly 3 million illegal aliens from our country, disrupting the department responsible for those gains is indefensible. I want to thank the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security for their professionalism, for their dedication, for their commitment to keeping America safe and continuing to show up and work even though they aren't being compensated for it. They've kept us safe and they have patience, and our success is only possible because of their service and sacrifices. I also want to thank our angel families that are behind us to tell their stories and testimonies, and also thank my husband for being here in support as well. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, Mr. Chairman, and to all the distinguished members. I look forward to your questions today. With that, I yield back.
I have spoken about the 10-minute times that we have. Get it up to 10 minutes for me. It's on 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Thank you for your testimony. The previous administration's open border policy brought millions of people to this country. We don't know everyone's background or true intent for entering, but we know many of these had ill intent. Given the Iran conflict, what steps has Homeland Security taken to protect the potential against potential Iranian sleeper cells and related terrorism?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We work every single day with our intelligence agencies and law enforcement partners to make sure that we are investigating and finding any threats to the homeland here within our borders. We work with the FBI often, and Homeland Security Investigations specializes in this kind of work each and every day. Not only that, we go back and we are revetting some of the individuals and some of the programs that we may have concerns about, looking at social media, also going through those interviews that are necessary for some of our programs that the Biden administration abused and perverted under their time there as well. We look at the fact, Mr. Chairman, that over the last administration, when millions of people streamed across our border, we don't necessarily know who all came into our country. We know that we have many dangerous individuals that came in unvetted, and we are working every single day to find them and to make sure that we're preventing the next attack and preventing the next crime they may perpetuate against the American people.
Yeah. You heard in my opening statement about the Inspector General's report on airport security screening. After Congress had been told of the report, you announced $1 billion in airport security upgrades. Press report have sources attacking you for changing the shoe removal policy. Does the $1 billion investment relate to the issue in the Inspector General's report? And then I have a follow-up to that.
Well, sir, I can't speak directly to that report because it is classified. I will tell you that all of the recommendations that the Inspector General had in that report have already been implemented, and that there was flawed data included in it. What I will tell you is the $1 billion investment is necessary at our TSA security checkpoints because it's been over a decade since a significant upgrade has happened. We have new technologies that can be used in X-ray baggage scanners, abilities to use information and new technologies to scan individuals that would be more efficient, allow people to get through the security checkpoint and get to their planes on time and ensure their safety. The number one priority of TSA is security. And we make sure that we are continuing to use all of the options and tools available to us to make sure that they are safe as they travel through our airports and in our airways.
Thank you for that report. The follow-up is, was going to ask for those details, but you've given me those details. Have these details been communicated to the Inspector General?
Yes, they have, sir. And I wanted to also, in regards to your comments in your opening statement, there's nothing preventing the IG from coming and briefing members of Congress, and he's free to do that. We just need to remember it's a classified document and use those protocols to ensure that it remains classified.
Regarding Afghan evacuee oversight of mine, you informed my office that thousands of Afghan parolees were potential national security risk. Nearly 1,000 was reported to me on August 12th last year. What steps have you taken with the interagency partners to investigate these parolees, and what, if any, national security concerns still exist because of the previous administration's failures to vet?
Well, Mr. Chairman, some of the things that we have implemented under President Trump's administration is to go back and look at those individuals who came in under Operation Allies Welcome and make sure that we're re-vetting those, especially those that have come in the last 4 years under the Biden administration, recognizing that they weren't tracking necessarily biometrics or their social media present communication, how they were doing since they've come to the United States. And also, sir, there's a requirement under that program to come back every single year and do an interview to discuss with them and have conversations on what they're doing in the United States, how they're transitioning to the United States under that program, and that was not being done. So we're going back and re-vetting all of those individuals and making sure that we know that if someone is here in this country, that they love America, they want to be a part of our way of life, and they don't wish to do us harm.
I'd like to have you provide me an update on the Afghan evacuee data. As I said in my opening, Trump administration has located over 145,000 children that the previous administration lost. Your department is also performing welfare checks on these children. Describe the ongoing efforts that your department is taking to find children who've yet to be located, and how recent welfare checks exposed previous vetting failures.
Yes, I would say those 450,000 children that came into this country that were unaccompanied alien children were lost by the Biden administration, not tracked. We've located about 145,000 of them, and we've done that through the investigative work of our Homeland Security Investigations team. They are phenomenal at the work that they do, and they specialize in child trafficking, sex trafficking, and finding individuals that would perpetuate that harm against our children. The one thing that has been challenging is that under the Biden administration, the government paid sponsors in HHS in order to host these children. And those sponsors, many times, we found instances where they trafficked these children themselves. So under that administration, we not only had children that were in this country as a part of a program, the government was paying individuals that were knowingly trafficking them and abusing them. That has stopped. We have gone through and found these children and put them back with their families when we have the opportunity to do so, and with loved ones that will care for them. And I would say that even in one case, we have other countries where we've been working with them to get their children back home, where we've been prevented returning these families back and helping them to be reunified by activist judges. But we will continue to work to ensure that these individuals and these children that were abused by the trafficking over the border have the opportunity to be brought back to their families and to their loved ones going forward.
I want to bring up administrative warrants. There's been questions raised about your department use of them. Immigration laws include complex and specialized legal processes. For the record today, please briefly discuss how the administrative warrant works and how often they're used.
Well, an administrative warrant is utilized on a regular basis because it's the process that Congress has given us. It's the process in immigration law that you've given us to ensure that someone is returned back to their home country. And I would say that most of the time when it gets talked about, it's inaccurate. In the 400,000 cases that ICE has used these administrative warrants, only 28 times have they been used to enter a home. So it is the legal process that we have, that we follow as given to us by Congress, and it's been affirmed by the Supreme Court as the correct way to follow the law. We will continue using this tool as it's important in the duties that the Department of Homeland Security is responsible for.
Under both Democrat and Republican presidents, I've conducted oversight of employees called special government employees. By law, these employee is limited to 130 days a year of government work, and it's been understood that a partial day is 1 day at work. Have you ensured the SGE personnel follow all laws, rules, and regulations as intended?
Yes, sir. They have career officials at the Department of Homeland Security that track that data, and they've all followed the laws and the rules regarding special government employees.
You stated that the Department of Government Efficiency found software on your government devices that was used to improperly surveil you and other political officials. What's the status of the investigation into that matter, and has any disciplinary action taken?
Yes, sir, there was software that was doing surveillance on political appointees at the Department of Homeland Security. And there was measures put in place where some people were removed from their positions and accountability measures put in place. And we continue to monitor our systems as the agency that is trusted with cybersecurity and ensuring that our critical infrastructure is protected from hacking attempts from foreign nationals who wish to do us harm or individuals within this country. We take seriously the amount of software, surveillance, and work that we do within the department as well.
My 10 minutes are up. Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Secretary Noem, the nation has watched horrified as immigration agents killed Renee Good, Alex Preddy. In Chicago, one of your Border Patrol agents shot Miramar Martinez 5 times after ramming her car. You and your agency rushed to brand these victims as, quote, domestic terrorists. We have ample video evidence and eyewitness testimony proving you are wrong. Your statements caused immeasurable pain to these families. Let me give you an opportunity to do the right thing. Do you retract these statements identifying these individuals as domestic terrorists?
You know, Senator Dermott, when we have these situations happen, we always offer our condolences to those families, and I offer mine as well. These are tragic situations, and I can't imagine what these families go through in losing a loved one. What I will say is we always work to provide the American people with as much information as possible, that we're relying on reports from the ground and from agents that are there and working to be transparent, and we'll continue to do all that we can to provide the accurate information and the facts to people as we can.
Where did you get that information? In a recent hearing before the HISGAC committee, CBP and ICE officials testified under oath that their agencies did not inform you that Preddy was a domestic terrorist during that hearing, stated during that hearing.
I was getting reports from the ground from agents at the scene, and I would say that it was a chaotic scene, as you've seen in Minneapolis and St. Paul, as immigration enforcement has gone forward, and we've worked at targeting the worst of the worst, that many times our agents have been faced with violent
the victims of
protesters.
that violence domestic terrorists as a way to calm the scene?
These violent terrorists have put them in a situation where it's unprecedented what these agents have faced it. So that situation on the ground that day was chaotic. And it was something that they were transpiring and sharing information
brand them as
with
domestic
us.
terrorists. Can you explain why you decided to brand these victims that we all saw on video, who were out protesting the activities of your agency and were killed as a result of it? How did you think that calling them domestic terrorists at that scene was somehow going to calm the situation?
You know, Senator, we are working in those situations where there's a tragic loss of life and that there is something that our agents are involved in, that we continue to deliver information.
Is it so hard to say you were wrong?
We continue, as these investigations continue to go, we will provide, I absolutely strive to provide factual information, and we'll continue to do that.
And when you fail, do you admit it publicly?
Absolutely. We always know that there's room for improvement, that we will.
Stop the clock, so.
Keith Porter Jr. and Dr. Linda Davis. They were Americans killed by ICE. You have not given their family any justice. Say their names. Their Black Lives Matter. Their Black Lives Matter. Their Black Lives Matter. Their Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to turn to another incident where DHS is concealing the facts from the American public. Geraldo Luna Campos died in an immigration detention. DHS claimed he killed himself, but an independent medical examiner found his death was a homicide. Witnesses stated Mr. Campos was strangled by the guards at a detention facility. Instead of investigating this death, your department tried to deport the witnesses to the crime. It took a judge intervening to ensure the fact that these witnesses remain in the country for investigation. Secretary Noem, who ordered those witnesses be deported?
Sir, I can't speak to the details of that case as it continues to be investigated, but I do know that within our detention facilities, we have the highest federal standards of any detention facilities compared to state or other local facilities that may detain.
There was an effort to deport the witnesses?
Sir, I'm not aware of that, and I will continue to look at that. Whenever there is an incident where we have someone who works for DHS that has done something wrong, there is always an evaluation, an investigation, and there is consequences for that. So we will continue to do that investigation and make sure that the right thing is done if
Who's
something
doing the investigation?
there are internal investigations
Internal
within.
investigation. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. ICE and
Outside independent agency that's part of that investigation?
not that I'm aware of at this point in time, but I may not be able to speak to the details of this case because I'm not fully
Shame,
informed
a
on
man
it.
lost his life. Just last week, the Republican-appointed chief federal judge in Minnesota identified over 200 court orders that ICE officials had violated in the last 2 months. He wrote, quote, "The court is not aware of another occasion in the history of the United States in which a federal court has had to threaten contempt again and again and again to force the U.S. government to comply with court orders." In a sworn declaration, the Trump Justice Department itself acknowledged that your agency has violated court orders more than 50 times in recent weeks in one state, New Jersey. Secretary Noem, is DHS required to follow federal court orders?
Yes, sir, and we do comply with federal court orders.
How do you explain that your agency has repeatedly violated court orders, as your own administration has admitted?
Sir, we follow court orders, and when they apply and when the jurisdiction and decision is applicable to a federal agency like ours.
I'm sorry, would you clarify what you ended that with?
We follow court orders when they are given to us. Federal court orders we follow,
So
absolutely.
these judges are wrong?
No, I'm not saying that they're wrong, and I can't speak specifically to that statement that was given.
Let me ask you about DACA. Are you familiar with the program?
Nope.
Do you understand the people that are covered and protected by DACA have to go through a background check, which includes a criminal check? Yes or no?
Yes.
You do? Last week, your agency informed us that last year ICE arrested 261 DACA holders and deported 86 of them. We learned about a DACA recipient who'd lived in this country for decades, was arrested by ICE at her green card appointment. In tears, she hugged her daughter goodbye. She was deported to Mexico within 24 hours. Madam Secretary, why have you deported dozens of DACA holders who had to comply with a criminal background check to be eligible for DACA?
Sir, we follow all laws as applicable to the Department of Homeland Security
Why
and
did
how
you
we
deport
handle
them?
detainment and deportations.
Why did you deport them?
I don't know the details of that specific case you just read, but I'll look into it, sir. But we ensure that we follow the law that applies to our department and who we detain and who we deport back to their home
You
countries.
clearly violated the law if that is the case. Let me ask you about the fact that 85% of the 400,000 immigrants that ICE arrested during President Trump's first term in office had no violent criminal record. The president said over and over at his rallies, "We're going after the worst of the worst, the terrorists, the murderers, the rapists." And then it turns out that 85% of the people you've gone after have no criminal history whatsoever. How do you explain that?
Sir, when you talk about violent crimes, what you're saying, the crimes that don't matter, that you aren't counting, are ones that affect American families every single day. You're not counting DUIs. You're not counting embezzlements. You're not counting theft. And you're not counting the other crimes against people and drug trafficking and proliferating that. So if you don't count those as crimes, that these individuals and impacting families in this country,
They are counted, and they calculate
Those-
14% of those that
those
you
are not
arrested.
counted in your 14%. If you were counting crimes that these illegal aliens in this country have committed, it would be well over 65 to 70% of the individuals that are detained today have those crimes on their record, besides the crime of being in this country
Going to back that
illegally.
up with some information for me?
Absolutely, I will.
I certainly hope you will. How does taking a father from a child dying of cancer qualify? Where would that be? Is that a violent crime?
I don't know what you're speaking or
I'll tell you
referencing
exactly
to.
what I'm speaking of. Ruben Torres, 2 weeks ago, buried his daughter Ophelia. When he was arrested at the Home Depot in Norridge, Illinois, he said to those who, your agents, please let me go home. My daughter is dying of cancer. I would like to be with her in her last days of her life. They said no. They arrested him and deported him for 2 weeks. Finally, he returned for a court hearing. His daughter lived to see that hearing where the court said he was treated unfairly by your agency, and she died 3 days later. I was at her memorial service. Is that really necessary? Was he a violent criminal?
Sir, we enforce the law. The laws that are passed by
What
this
law?
body and signed into statute on the process for individuals that are in this country illegally, that have final removal orders, and the process given in immigration law. We continue to follow that, and if you don't like the law, I would suggest you change the law. But that is what we do
We tried
every
to
single
change the
day, is
law.
go out there.
We tried to change it with comprehensive immigration reform, and it was stopped by the Republican House of Representatives.
Our job at the department is to follow the law and make sure that we are a nation of laws, because
I don't
a
think
nation
you're-
that
I
doesn't
don't
follow
think
the
you're
law
close when it comes to that.
is no nation at all.
I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Graham.
Thank you very much for coming. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Thank
now
you.
we can.
Thanks very much. Well, let's talk about the scope of the problem you inherited here. My Democratic friends said that sensible immigration is what they've been pursuing, talked about the Gang of Eight and a lot of things I've worked on with. Would you say that the 4 years of Biden was sensible immigration?
No.
I wouldn't either. I would say it's obliteration of the border. 11 million people came into this country during President Biden's term. He obliterated all controls. We sent them all over the country in planes, trains, and automobiles. And what's the scope of the problem you inherited? How would you describe the mess that Biden gave you very quickly?
Our country was in a chaotic time and invaded over our southern border. Millions and millions of people came into this country.
For 11,000
unvetted.
murderers, right?
Yes, that is correct.
2,700% increase in people on the terrorist watch list, right?
That's correct.
During his 4 years, President Biden allowed 2,700% increase of people on the terrorist watch list to come into this country. In 2023, 172. Do you know where those people are?
No, not
So
necessarily.
we don't know where they are. They're here, but we don't know where they are because they didn't care if they came and they haven't really looked very hard. So sensible immigration died on Biden's watch. It was replaced by out of control, open border, just absolute chaos. And to all the people on the front row that have lost loved ones, I am sorry. Your family members are a victim of an out of control, Democratic-led effort to obliterate the border, and every senator on this side of the aisle, that side of the aisle, did nothing about it. Now they want to talk to you about problems we've had. Are these shootings being investigated in Minnesota?
Yes, they are.
They should be investigated in Minnesota. We want to have orderly processes. How would you say being an ICE agent is right now, the stress they're under?
I think it's unprecedented for them every day.
I think it's miserable. I think it's just a tough, tough job right now. And if they go too far, we will hold them accountable. But I just want the country to know these men and women who are trying to solve this problem that was created by our Democratic colleagues, you have no idea the mess they inherited. This country was overrun by illegal immigrants, murderers, rapists, and just average everyday people. How many people did Barack Obama deport when he was president?
The total, I
3
don't know, but it
million.
was more than us.
How many of them were violent criminals? So when a Democrat deports somebody who's here illegally, that's good government. When a Republican does it, we're Nazis and fascists. If you're here illegally, are you entitled to stay?
No.
They would allow you to stay. I want you to understand that these people have no interest in cleaning up this mess. In 2026, we're going to have an election about this, and they're openly saying, unless you're a violent criminal, you should be allowed to stay here. Is embezzlement a violent crime?
No.
Is it a crime without a victim?
Yes.
If somebody steals your stuff, even if they don't do it through force, is that a crime with a victim?
Yes.
So all of the Laken Riley, I think she was murdered by a man who was actually in custody. Are you familiar with the Laken Riley case?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I am.
Okay, she's a young lady about 60 miles from where I live. The man who murdered her was in custody, was detained by DHS, but was released because they had no bed space in Texas. He went to New York and committed a bunch of crimes. He winds up in Georgia and he murders this young lady. He was in our control. He was released not because he wasn't dangerous, because we had no place to put him. Do you agree those days are over?
Yes.
Do you agree the most secure border in American history has been achieved by you and those under your control?
Yes.
Working with President Trump. Are you proud of that?
I am proud of that.
So we're down to like nobody coming across. We went from a invasion to almost nobody. And I hope the American people will appreciate that's a good thing for you. Mm-hmm. Now we're engaged in military action against the mothership of terrorism, Iran, which I hope will sink pretty soon. Do you think the threat level against the United States is up or down when it comes to radical Islamic terrorists?
It's up.
It's up?
Yep.
So you mean they actually may want to come here and hit us because we hit them in Iran? I don't think you have to be, a general to figure that out. Mm-hmm. Is the Coast Guard without funding?
Portions of it. We're keeping some of the salaries paid, but
So there's no funds in the appropriation bill for the Coast Guard. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Because your agency is not being funded. It's the one part of the appropriations bill where we haven't agreed on funding. Is that correct?
Correct.
So FEMA, no money, right? Coast Guard, no money. Really? Really? ICE, they have money because of the bill we did before. The Secret Service, are these people being paid?
Yes, they are.
They're being paid, but do we have money?
Our law enforcement is paid, but their resources, their administrative
They're not
staff,
being
their
paid out of
contracting.
appropriated funds
Correct.
this year, right?
Correct.
So in the appropriations process, we've got no new money for the Secret Service. Does that make any sense to anybody in America? Can we not understand America is under siege now? Likely to be attacked because radical Islam is under siege and they're going to hit back. And we're sitting here looking at each other and not funding DHS. If you want to reform ICE, great. Count me in. If you want to make DHS more professional, count me in. If you want to investigate bad shootings, count me in. If you don't want to do away with sanctuary cities, count me out. What's a sanctuary city?
A city that protects itself from our federal immigration efforts in their city.
Are there sanctuary cities and states in this country?
Yes, there are.
Look at this chart. There are 200 plus sanctuary counties. There are 12 sanctuary states. 8 million illegal immigrants reside in sanctuary jurisdictions in defiance of federal law. A sanctuary city refuses to turn over to the federal government people that are subject to deportation. Is that correct?
Correct.
They make a choice, these sanctuary states, counties, cities, not to cooperate with federal officials, and the laws have been on the book long before Donald Trump, right?
Correct.
Do you think it would be good for the country to abolish sanctuary cities and states?
I do.
Do you believe as long as they exist, it will be a magnet for future immigration, illegal immigration?
Yes, I do.
So if you're a legal immigrant and you can get to one of these sanctuary cities, states, or towns, you believe you'll never leave. Until you fix this, you're going to have illegal immigrant magnets. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Would you urge the Congress to abolish sanctuary cities?
Yes, I would, sir.
And sanctuary states. When it comes to the threat level against our homeland, how would you characterize it right now?
Right now, I would say, sir, that we should have our every effort within the Department of Homeland Security out protecting people 24/7, because we face not just enemies from overseas that threaten our way of life and our American values. The Biden administration let them here. They let them in our borders. They're in our hometowns. They are unvetted. thousands and thousands of people that are dangerous criminals, gang members, known and
Who's this
suspected
guy?
terrorists.
Who's this guy?
He is the man that conducted the horrific act down in Austin.
Okay, what country did he come from?
I think Senegal.
Okay, and he was killed in Austin, Texas, right?
He was.
And the shirt said what?
Property of Allah.
Property of Allah. And when you went to his house, you found a what kind of flag?
Iranian flag.
Iranian flag. Wonder how many people are like that here, waiting to pounce. And DHS doesn't have appropriated funds. This is insane. There are more people like this. We obliterated our borders. 1.7 million people came into this country from countries that were designated to be a problem. Special interest aliens. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
So 1.7 million came from countries that would make you a special interest alien because of the nature of the country. Libya, Nigeria, North Korea, Afghanistan, China, Cuba. Do you know where those 1.7 million people are?
Not all of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where they are either. But they let them in. We don't know where they are. They came from countries that are so dicey. We made you a special interest alien if you came from those countries. So we're having a hearing here. I'd like to make ICE more professional. I'd like to make sure if there was a bad shooting, it's documented as such and people pay a price. But I will not apologize to anybody in this room to try to clean up the mess that Biden started and you empowered. We've got to deal with this. We've been invaded. Only God knows how many people are here and what they're up to, and we're not going to stop. We're going to learn, but we're not going to stop because America is under siege, and the idea we're not defunding DHS is insane, criminally insane.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thanks very much, Chairman. Let me start by noting that we have repeatedly said, our ranking member on the Senate Appropriations Committee, Senator Murray, has said that we are more than willing to fund TSA, more than willing to fund the Coast Guard, more than willing to fund FEMA, and that it is the administration that is holding those agencies hostage in order to extract additional funding for ICE and CBP. That is our quite clearly stated position, and I just wanted to recognize that now. Ms. Noem, I want to walk you through an incident that took place in Rhode Island. We have a courthouse in Rhode Island, our Superior Court. The court had an agreement with your organization not to conduct operations in that courthouse. Despite that agreement, your officers went in to conduct operations in that courthouse. They went in plain clothes and masked, so maybe they were aware of the agreement, maybe they weren't. Either way, it was unprofessional not to honor the agreement with the court. There is also a court rule against photographing people in the courthouse. They were photographing people in the courthouse. They either didn't know or didn't care about that court rule. Either way, it was unprofessional. They were pursuing an intern and taking photos of this young intern who was not the person supposedly sought. The intern was in high school. The person sought was in his 30s. It shouldn't be too hard to tell the difference. They couldn't. It was unprofessional. A state judge escorted the intern out to his car to take him back to high school. The agents didn't recognize the judge. They operate against the agreement in a courtroom and don't bother to know who the judges are. Again, unprofessional. They followed the judge out to his parked car, which was parked in a spot reserved for judges. Whether or not they already knew he was a judge, it does not take much in terms of powers of deduction to understand that the person getting into a car in a parking spot reserved for judges is probably a judge. Again, unprofessional. Then they threatened to smash his windows and drag him from the car. A judge with a high school intern in the car who's not the guy they're looking for. That kind of escalation seems unprofessional and irresponsible. Then they held the kid for half an hour in another vehicle while they figured out that, in fact, the high school kid was not the 30-plus-year-old person that they were supposedly looking for. Nobody was hurt, but there was nothing professional about that entire exchange. And I would ask you to send a signal down to your folks to stop that kind of dangerous and unprofessional nonsense, particularly in our courthouses. Let me ask you, why don't you deconflict with local enforcement when you operate?
Our officers do. We welcome cooperation from local law enforcement and want them at the state level, at the local level, to cooperate with us so that we can continue to conduct our federal operations with the safety of the cooperation that comes from those types of agreements.
Deconflicting and cooperating are two different things. They can overlap, but they are two different things. You deconflict when you plan an operation in another law enforcement agency's jurisdiction, like here, the court sheriffs, and let them know what you're going to do. This all could have been headed off if you'd spoken to if your people had spoken to the sheriffs first and said, we're concerned about this guy. Oh no, he's an intern, he's in high school. None of this was necessary if they had bothered to deconflict. So please, send the message down to your people that there's a reason that deconflicting is standard law enforcement practice for, among other things, officer safety. Will you do that?
Yes, sir, but I will tell you that our law enforcement are being doxxed at unprecedented levels. So at times we've run into situations in sanctuary cities or in sanctuary states where notifying that local law enforcement on some of these operations has doxxed them and their families and leaked a law enforcement operation, which puts people's lives in jeopardy. So they absolutely want to work with cooperative local law enforcement.
About that,
and in that case
I strongly
specifically,
suspect that there's a big difference
these
between
individuals,
non-cooperation and actual interference with your operations. But I'll reserve that to a question for the record so you can substantiate that. Could you explain this?
Sir, I'm looking at a picture of an interior, looks like a bedroom.
Of an airplane?
Yes, sir.
You're not familiar with that?
These photos are not accurate. If you're referring to the airplanes that the Department of Homeland Security has purchased and are purchasing, we're using them for long-range command and control aircraft that is dictated in statute by Congress for the Department of Homeland Security to have a plane.
Luxury jet with a bedroom in it?
Yeah, we used a 737. I've been on it once, but it is being used by other administration officials, and it is used for command and control flights for the department. The department has found that in purchasing our aircraft, that we will save the taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars.
Does it have a bedroom in it?
In fact, we spent $1.442 billion on ICE deportation flights last year.
Does it have a bedroom in it?
I believe it's being refurbished and not having a bedroom in it. So it is being refurbished.
What kind of deportee justifies being flown out of the country in a luxury jet with a bedroom and accommodations like this?
There are aircraft being purchased that will be utilized for executive air travel and for deportations.
Well,
if you remember in the past, we have used jets of this size and this configuration for deportations in the past. If you remember
this configuration, by this configuration, you mean with a bedroom and luxury accommodations like this?
That plane
used for deportations. Is that true?
Sir, we have 737s that are being purchased by the department to replace contracts that we have on ICE deportations. That's what they're going to be used for. And in fact, the Coast Guard is the only entity within the Department of Homeland Security that has jets at this point in time. They had two G5s that were 20 to 25 years old
Let me ask
that are
you
being
about
replaced
the
so that they can
response
continue to serve our
from
Coast Guard and our military
some senior
for
administration
years to come.
officials about these aircraft. They've been reported as saying, although they don't want to say publicly this, but individuals described as senior administration officials have described these airplane purchases as the world's worst deal and an abuse of federal funds. Can you tell me what the Republicans on this committee who voted for what I call the billionaires bill that gave you the money to buy these jets knew about your plans to acquire luxury jets when they voted for that money?
The dollars for these airplanes was appropriated by Congress. In fact, it's mandated from Congress and rules that you've given us that we need to have a long-range command and control aircraft that will seat up to 17 people in the Department of Homeland Security for national security purposes. We are complying with the law. Those planes are being refurbished and will be utilized
we'll
for that,
see.
and they'll be
Two quick
utilized
questions
by
in my
members of
last
the
minute, if you
administration
don't
and
mind.
other components.
First,
They will also cut our costs, sir,
First, in my last
by
minute,
almost
if you don't mind,
40%. We are saving
can
the
you-
taxpayer 40% by purchasing our own aircraft
May I
and
have a
operating
minute?
them rather than being susceptible to the contracts that they have today.
I'll,
we have an extra 2 minutes to fill in the filibuster there.
I'll give you 30 seconds beyond the 44
Will
seconds
you-
you got now.
Truthfully answer a question for the record about your role in stopping the civil rights investigation into the Minnesota shootings.
Sir, I don't know what you're talking about. I did not stop any investigations whatsoever.
Will you testify truthfully if you get a QFR?
Yes, I testified truthfully. I did not
And will you
stop.
testify in the District of Columbia Federal Court contempt proceeding?
Sir, I do not know what you're referencing, and I would hope for some context.
The Federal District Court contempt proceeding related to the deportation, contrary to a court order, of individuals to Venezuela. Will you testify in that proceeding?
Sir, I think that you're referencing something that I have a gag order to, but I can certainly follow up with you.
My time's up. Thank you.
Senator Kennedy, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here. President Trump, ably assisted by Mr. Stephen Miller, quickly in the President's second administration developed policies to secure our southern border, policies that you and the Department of Homeland Security implemented. And I congratulate all of you on your success. Properly vetting people at the southern border is not racist, is it?
No,
Could you answer for the record?
no, it is not racist.
Properly vetting people at the southern border is prudent, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it is.
And to do that, we need the Border Patrol, do we not?
Yes, we do.
And we also need ICE, do we not?
Yes, we do.
Okay. I just wanted to get my congratulations on the record. I believe you have a policy, Madam Secretary, that you have to approve all contracts at your department over $100 million.
No, sir, I have a policy in place that I review contracts. My deputy chiefs have the ability to review anything under 5 million. Above that, I evaluate and look at.
Okay. And you do that, I understand, to try to curb waste and abuse of taxpayer money. Is that right?
Yes, sir. In fact, it's been extremely effective. We've saved the taxpayers over $13.2 billion just by evaluating contracts, negotiating lower ones, and canceling ones that aren't necessary to do our duties.
How do you square that concern for waste, which I share, with the fact that you have spent $220 million running television advertisements that feature you prominently?
Sir, the president tasked me with getting the message out to the country and to other countries where we were seeing the invasion come from, with putting commercials out that told them that if they were in this country illegally, that they needed to leave, or we would detain them and remove them, and they'd not get the chance to come back to America the right way. That has been extremely effective.
Ask you to run these advertisements, is that right?
We had that conversation, yes, before I was put in this position and sworn in and confirmed, and since then as well.
Okay. Did you bid out those service contracts?
Yes, they did. They went out to a competitive bid, and career officials at the department chose who would do those advertising commercials.
And the people that you ended up picking were people who had formerly done your political work back in South Dakota, is that right?
No, that's not correct, sir.
I think it is.
No, it's not, sir. The individuals who, I believe the careers who they chose were two different media firms. There's been conversation about their subcontractors, but we have no legal authority to look into subcontractors on work like that.
Okay. And you're saying that you're testifying that President Trump approved this ahead of time. Is that my understanding?
We had conversations about making sure that we were telling people.
No, ma'am. I'm asking you, sorry to interrupt, but the president approved ahead of time you spending $220 million running TV ads across the country in which you are featured prominently.
Yes, sir. We went through the legal processes, did it
Did the
correctly,
president
worked
know
with
you were going to
OMB.
do this?
Yes.
He did?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
And one thing, Senator, I think would be helpful to know is how effective that communications has been. That
Well, they were
overwhelmingly
effective in your name recognition. I mean, I personally just, I mean, to me, it puts the president in a terribly awkward spot. And and I'm not saying you're not telling the truth. It's just hard for me to believe, knowing the president, as I do, that you said, Mr. President, here's some ads I've cut, and I'm going to spend $220 million running them, that he would have agreed to that. I don't think Russ Vogt at OMB would have agreed to that. It's something we have to defend. I'm on the Appropriations Committee. My research shows that you did not bid them out, that you pick, in fact, one of the people you picked, the strategy group, Safe America Media was a company formed 11 days before you picked them, and that the strategy group got most of the money, and the head of that is married to your former spokesperson. Look, we all have friends who are qualified. I'm not quibbling with that. It troubles me. A fifth to a quarter of $1 billion of taxpayer money when we're scratching for every penny and we're fighting over rescission packages. I just can't agree with Madam Secretary. Are you still running those ads?
No, Senator, I did not have anything to do with picking those contractors. No politicals at the Department of Homeland Security did.
I understand. Are you
Career
still running
officials
those
followed
ads?
the competitive bid process for
Are you
that.
still running
Everything
those
was,
ads?
I think the ads are due to end here in March, I think within a week or
So
two.
they
I'm
are
not sure of the
still
update. The one that is running is focusing on angel families. Have you seen that? It is the one that's talking about this is our why. This is why we work every day.
Okay.
Is for the angel
I've gotta
families
move
and their
on.
victims that need to.
After the two killings in Minneapolis, and I think there's a lot of video on them, Madam Secretary. I think people can see the video and draw their own conclusions. Are you and your department conducting an investigation of those?
Sir, the investigation is being led by the FBI. HSI was involved. In fact, our HSI agents on the ground.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I got so little time. I believe at the time you said these were acts of domestic terrorism. Is that right?
Sir, in answer to questions at the press conference that afternoon, it was that it appeared to be.
Yeah, but you said these appeared to be acts of domestic terrorism.
And as I've said previously in this hearing, is that
first, Madam Secretary, did you say
we're getting information from a chaotic scene on the ground and relaying information to the American people.
Okay. Now, again, those videos are public. People can draw their own conclusions. I think it'd be safe to say you got some pushback on that. Mm-hmm. Would that be fair?
Yes, sir.
And you had some criticism. I'm not saying the criticism was accurate or inaccurate. I think you did. What got my attention was that you blamed those statements on Mr. Stephen Miller at the White House. Did you not?
No, sir, I did not. And in fact, where you're seeing that is in a news article of anonymous sources. And anonymous sources say a lot of things, but I've never said that at all.
Well, here's what you said on the record. I'm going to read your words. Quote, "Everything I've done at the direction of the president and Stephen."
Sir, where did you see me say that at? You read that in a news article with no sources affiliated to it.
You said it on the record on January 27th of 2026. Did I read your words accurate?
I enjoy working with the president and with Stephen Miller, and that day we were working to get as much information to the American people as possible. That is what we'll continue to do, and as that happens, we'll go forward.
Do you think it was fair to blame Mr. Miller?
Sir, I did not do that. You're reading from a newspaper article with anonymous sources.
Are you denying that you said that?
Sir, I'm not going to speak to that situation that is relayed on anonymous sources that no one has heard me say that.
It was you.
No. Who reported that to that newspaper?
They're quoting you on the record, saying it's Stephen's fault. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Noem, as Secretary of Homeland Security, you oversaw Operation Metro Search. Is that correct?
Yes, as Secretary, I oversee ICE and CBP and HSI officers that were there doing their work.
3,000 ICE agents, Border Control to Minnesota, outnumbering our 10 Metro Police departments, outnumbering by 3 to 1 the number of sworn police officers in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Is that correct?
Yeah. We were working to do targeted operations against criminal illegal aliens, and we needed to do that in a safe manner to make sure that we could ensure the safety of our law enforcement officers.
2 of my constituents, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, were killed. They should be alive today. In fact, in 1 month in the city of Minneapolis, when you look at the 3 fatalities that were results of shooting, 2 of 3 were committed by federal agents. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am.
So your agents, not only their actions resulted in the deaths of 2 innocent American citizens, but they repeatedly violated my constituents' First Amendment rights to assemble. You say you believe in the Second Amendment right to bear arms, but Alex Preddy was criticized repeatedly by officials in the administration for having a lawful permit to carry and having a gun. Your agents violated the Fourth Amendment rights of my constituents by ramming through doors of innocent people's homes, innocent citizens' home, without any kind of a warrant, and violated the Fifth Amendment right to due process. So as I've shared with my colleagues, if you believe in federalism, in freedom, and in liberty, you should be horrified by what the Department of Homeland Security did in Minnesota. So my first question is, having spoken to Mr. Homan, what is the exact number of DHS agents still in Minnesota?
Well, I believe that there is still close to 650 there, counting the investigators that are there, working to get to the bottom of the unprecedented fraud that has been found in the Medicaid
Was
funding.
5-year-old Liam involved in that fraud? As you know, I am all in on prosecuting fraud. I put in place the U.S. attorney who exposed the fraud under the Biden administration and brought the bulk of the prosecutions, and also recommended to Mr. Blanche that Joe Thompson be the acting U.S. attorney who led those prosecutions and now has left the office because the Department of Justice asked him and many others to investigate Renee Good's wife instead of doing their jobs doing fraud. So what I want to know is, when are you going to get down to the original footprint as promised to us?
We're continuing to work at that, although those investigators will continue to stay there to get to the bottom of that fraud, to make sure that those vulnerable people that rely on those programs actually get services from those federal dollars that are spent, that it's not stolen by criminals and used by individuals to enrich themselves and send it out of the country.
Secretary Chung-Li Tao, are you aware that agents bashed in the door of a U.S. citizen, a Hmong elder with no criminal record?
I can't speak to the specifics of that case.
Did you see the photos of that man being dragged out of his house in Crocs and in his underwear?
Yes, I did.
Do you believe that he was involved in fraud?
I do not know where that status of that investigation is.
Are you aware that he is a son of a beloved nurse that treated our soldiers in Vietnam?
I believe that we have laws in this country that need to be enforced and need to be applied
Your
equally to
agents,
everyone.
speaking of enforcing the laws and following the laws, did they have a judicial warrant when they rammed through an American citizen's door?
Our law enforcement officers follow the same protocols and procedures that all law enforcement do.
Are you aware that he tried to show his identification to show that he was American citizen and they didn't want to see it?
Again, these officers conduct themselves in processes. If something was done inaccurately, then certainly we will make sure that we correct it and rectify it in the future.
Are you aware that the person they were looking for was in prison and had been in prison for years?
Yes, I am. That's a target. Yes, we do targeted operations going after and looking for.
Do you agree that it is unacceptable for your agents to ram into someone's door and drag someone out in their underwear and below zero temperatures when they have the wrong guy?
Our officers conduct targeted operations and utilize the law processes that are given to them and the tools.
You will not answer that you think that's wrong.
They needed to identify that individual, and
they couldn't identify him by looking at his identification. Instead, they had to drag him out, throw him in a car, and drive him around for an hour. How about pulling off-duty police officers, Madam Secretary, every single one of whom made clear who they were. They were people of color, off-duty police officers. In Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, the chief described how one off-duty officer, someone of color, a U.S. citizen, was stopped and confronted by ICE agents with their guns drawn, demanding her proof of citizenship. As Chief Bruley said, I wish I could tell you that this was an isolated incident, but the other chief said it had happened to their own officers. Why were these officers stopped?
We have thousands of law enforcement operations that we do every single day.
Do you think they were stopped because they were people of color? Were they racially
and drug
profiled?
Traffickers off our streets. When I look at these American families that have been victimized by criminals that we have removed from cities and from communities, I'm grateful for the work that our ICE officers do. And by your only focusing,
are you defending stopping
I would like to hear you talk about some of the operations that we've done
a
to
Hmong
bring
elder
people
out of
to
his
justice.
home?
When you only talk about these situations like this that we are conducting, and you don't talk about the good work that they do to protect people from being victimized by people that are in this country that want to conduct violent crimes against them or take advantage of them. The laws need to apply to everyone, and we're out there enforcing the law.
I am a former prosecutor,
Context is
Ms. Noem, and
incredibly important.
have always
in every
worked
situation.
with our police well, but that's not what was going. These ICE agents were not following police procedures. After the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, when I spoke to Alex's parents, they told me that you calling him a domestic terrorist, this was directly from them, the day after he was killed. A nurse in our VA, Alex, one of the most hurtful things they could ever imagine was said by you about their son. Do you have anything you want to say to Alex Preddy's parents?
We were relying in the hours after that incident that was so horrific on information we were getting from the ground from
just
our
asked
agents.
if you had
But I
anything
would
you wanted to say to the
but I would
parents
say
or to the family
that's
of
what
Renee
I'm doing
Good
right
after
now, is
you
that
called
I
them domestic
can't
terrorists.
even imagine what they have gone through in the loss of their son and the loss of their family members.
But
It's
how about
absolutely
specifically
tragic.
calling them
And I
domestic
send
terrorists
them-
without any evidence of
Yes.
that?
Sir, ma'am, I did not call him a domestic terrorist. I said it appeared to be an incident of.
I think the parents saw it for what it was. After the killings, the federal government refused to cooperate with state law enforcement. Agents blocked Minnesota investigators from accessing the scene. I know because I got directly calls from the mayor. I tried to call the DOJ. I tried to do everything I could because they were very worried about what was going to happen immediately, especially after Alex Preddy's death. Do you think that blocking local law enforcement from the scene of a shooting makes people safer? Yes or no?
Actually, our HSI law enforcement officers risked their lives on that scene, preserving evidence and keeping the violent rioters away from the evidence so it
What
could be
life was
preserved
lost
for the
at that
investigation.
scene, Secretary Noem?
Yes, I
It was
understand that.
Alex Preddy's life
And
that was
after it
lost.
became
I
very,
believe it is in the interest of justice to have a full and transparent investigation.
is the investigations being led by FBI and internal investigations as well into this incident.
Will you commit to reversing the decision to cooperate with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, an agency of seasoned professionals that the agents worked with directly, FBI agents worked with directly to investigate after the shooting assassination of Speaker Hortman, after the killing of those two little kids in that church with the bullets going through those stained glass windows? In both incidents, our federal and local law enforcement worked together and are working together in those investigations. But they have been blocked, the locals have, from being part of this. Why is that, Ms. Noem?
The FBI is leading this investigation, and I would leave that question for them to answer.
Thank you.
Before Senator Blackburn, without objection, I'll introduce into the record unaccompanied children case study that the Trump Health and Human Services provided to my office. These records describe horrible cases in which children were forced to work to pay smuggling fees, physical assaulted by sponsors, and denied a chance to attend schools. The unaccompanied children case study are further evidence of the previous administration's policies to put children in harm's way. I appreciate the cooperation of the Trump administration. Is there any objection?
Mr. Chairman,
Proceed.
I do not object, but I would like to have unanimous consent to enter into the record the details of the 3 instances where the Secretary referred to the victims that we've discussed and as engaged in acts of domestic terrorism. We have the exact statement, the exact date and time that you made those statements. I'd ask unanimous consent to put those in the record.
On both requests, any objection? No objection heard. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, thank you for being here today. And I want to thank you so much for the work that DHS and FEMA have done in Tennessee with the recent ice storm, but also previously with Hurricane Helene, and the responsiveness we have gotten from FEMA, the difference from the previous administration and your administration has been noted by people in Tennessee, and I just want to express my gratitude to those employees that are working so hard. So we truly are grateful for that. I want to go back to something Senator Durbin said in his opening statement. He referred to the Biden policy, immigration policy, as sensible and humane. And in his comments, he said there was a sensible and humane way to deal with immigration, but he felt like Biden's policy was sensible and humane, and what you all are doing is not sensible and humane. And this struck me because the Biden administration allowed hundreds of thousands of those illegally entering the country. We have seen hundreds of thousands of migrant children that have been lost. There is nothing sensible and humane about that. There is nothing sensible and humane about having terrorists walk across our border and come into this country. There is nothing sensible and humane to these wonderful families who are grieving the loss of loved ones, that somebody illegally came in the country and took the life of their loved ones. So those comments really struck me. And I want to provide you the opportunity to respond to what Senator Durbin supported, the Biden immigration policy. We had hours and hours of hearings dealing with such. He supported the Biden DHS. But to me, there is nothing sensible and humane about allowing millions of people to violate the rule of law in the United States. And I yield to you for a response.
Yes, well, thank you, Senator. When you look at the Biden immigration policies, I think Senator Durbin is ignoring the consequences of illegal immigration. Over 30% of the young girls that crossed that border during that invasion were raped and brutally harmed by people along the way. There's nobody that crossed that border, came in from Mexico, that didn't have to pay a cartel member to get into this country. Those cartels have been enriched and made sophisticated and professionalized by the money that Joe Biden facilitated putting into their pockets by allowing that invasion to happen and funneling people into the cartel's hands. I also would say that 4,000 people died during that invasion. When people were coming into this country, died because of the inhumane circumstances that were going on, from the heat that they were having to deal with, from drowning in the river. It was not humane what we saw being facilitated by the Biden administration. So every day, the people at the Department of Homeland Security get up to defend this country and our borders and the citizens that live here. I know, Senator Durbin, that you appear to be very concerned about illegal immigrants that are in this country. I will tell you that as a Secretary of Homeland Security, I am very concerned in doing my job and protecting American citizens. That's my number one priority, and I will continue to enforce the law and make sure it applies equally to everyone that's in this country.
Thank you. Joe Kent, who is the director of National Counterterrorism Center, last year told the House Homeland Security Committee that there are at least 18,000 known terrorists that are here in this country. And I've heard from Tennesseans all weekend long about their concerns. The attack in Austin was really quite unsettling. And the awareness that there are these terrorists that are among the citizens here in our country. So would you lay out, not only for this committee, but for the American people, what steps are you and your team taking right now to make certain that we apprehend, detain, and prosecute these terrorists before they have the ability to conduct any act of evil?
Well, Senator, when you let millions of people into this country unvetted, you truly don't know how many dangerous, known and suspected terrorists there may be in this country. We continue to do our investigative work. We continue to look at individuals that are here that may be committing crimes and working with local and state law enforcement where possible. What I would say is anybody that we know that the Biden administration has given green cards to or naturalized. We're going back and re-vetting those individuals, those who came in under refugee programs. We are re-vetting those individuals and interviewing them and talking to them to ensure that they are someone who is here appropriately and they didn't come in under a program that was abused by the Biden administration. We continue to use our intelligence and analysis department under the Department of Homeland Security to gather intelligence and cooperate with other intelligence agencies and with the FBI to go after and to prosecute those who would wish to do us harm. We're grateful for the American citizens that work with us. And we understand that people who are in this country illegally and have final removal orders should be detained. Our priority is going to continue to go after those worst of the worst and to make sure that we are getting them out of our country as soon as possible and brought to justice if they've committed crimes here.
There are a couple of bills we were able to fund in the Working Families Tax Cut Big Beautiful Bill back during the summer, and we're so grateful for President Trump and the attention that he put on some of these issues of protecting the American people and making that the priority. And you know, that's a part of upholding our oath. I think many of us were struck last week when the president asked, do you think it's the first order of business to protect the American people? And many of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle just sat there. That was stunning. So we're grateful for this focus on protecting our people. There were two bills, the Prince Act and the End Child Trafficking Now Act. These are pieces of legislation I've pushed forward. Now, this helps with protecting these children that are being trafficked, many of them globally trafficked. We're fully aware that Homeland Security investigations, and I think they're defunded right now during the shutdown, are trying to find some of these traffickers, rescue these children, and return them to their families. These two bills allow the collection of DNA and fingerprints so that we can stop this repeat trafficking of children. And I want you to talk for just a moment about the importance of having this legislation on the books and how you were using this to help break these global trafficking rings.
Yeah. No, I appreciate those bills, and I'm hoping that this body will find them important and get them signed into law as soon as possible. Collecting of DNA is incredibly important to making sure that children aren't being abused or trafficked. But we saw many times during the Biden administration where the same child would be used by cartels to move individuals into this country illegally. And so one of the policies we put it back in place as soon as President Trump came into the White House is DNA testing of those individuals coming into our country. When we interdicted them, that we would ensure that they were the family that they said that they should be, and that those children weren't being moved with strangers or abused and trafficked by them.
One of the things that has come up regularly when I'm out and about around Tennessee is that we have some of these mayors and governors that have recently demanded millions of dollars in taxpayer reparations for having ICE in their communities. Now, in the case of Minnesota, they're looking at as much as $18 billion in fraud. $18 billion. And what they've uncovered there, what they allowed to happen, whether they want to say they knew about it or they didn't know about it, but it appears they knew about it, and we'll let the investigation bear that out. What do you say to these mayors and governors who are defying the law by having a sanctuary city for illegal immigration that are allowing rampant fraud of taxpayer money? It is not their money. It is taxpayer money. They allow it to happen. And then they are so brazen and calloused and disrespectful of the taxpayer, they stand up and demand reparations. What do you say to them?
Yeah, it's impossible to take them seriously. The hypocrisy of saying that you care about your economy and you care about your citizens when you've allowed that kind of fraud to go forward that they have in these programs. And these programs are there to care for individuals and give services to some of our most vulnerable in society. Those individuals that have developmental disabilities, individuals who need special services in order to care for them and to help those families for a period of time with individuals and their family members that need to be that specialized care. They have stolen that from them, allowed individuals to abuse those programs, and have done it to the detriment of not just their families there, but also the businesses there and the educational entities and even their credibility to speak. You know, those are the same individuals that called our ICE officers the Gestapo and demonized them, and their rhetoric is very detrimental to the environment that we face every day on our law enforcement operations. So my hope is that we'll continue to get to the bottom of those investigations and bring those criminals to justice.
Before Senator Coons, Senator Durbin wanted to.
Mr. Chairman, the senator from Tennessee invoked my name several times, so I'd just like one moment to respond. What she said is simply inaccurate. I didn't mention the Biden administration at all in my opening statement. What I said, and I still believe, is that if we work together in a positive, good faith, bipartisan effort, we can come up with a sensible, humane immigration law for America. You've heard the witness say repeatedly, we write the laws. She's correct. We need to accept the responsibility of writing a law that is sensible for this country. What I think is happening now in this administration is neither sensible nor humane. I yield.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, thank you for appearing before us. It is your duty and mine, all of ours here, to protect our American homeland and our citizens, but to do so in a way that is legal, that is humane, that is effective, and principally constitutional. So let's get to that. Foundational to the administration's entire immigration agenda and to everything we've seen in the streets of Minneapolis and other cities across our country is your pursuit of higher and higher numbers for deportation. The mass deportations that Stephen Miller designed and President Trump has ordered you to implement. It's why we have roving patrols, racially profiling whomever they see and creating a show me your papers state. It's why you go into sensitive locations like churches and hospitals and schools. It's why you have been arresting children, the elderly, refugees, the disabled, including a resident in my own state suffering from severe developmental disabilities. When there's pressure on you to hit high numbers, you don't have the time to focus on targeted effects to find violent criminals on the run. It's easier to simply round up people here breaking no laws and contributing to our communities. It's why you deny people due process and rush them out of the country. And it's why you've put poorly trained ICE recruits on our streets, engaging in reckless and dangerous tactics. Does DHS, Madam Secretary, operate on any quotas or numerical targets for immigration arrests every day?
No, Senator, we do not. We do targeted law enforcement operations going after those worst of the worst criminals that are here illegally.
I would certainly prefer it if you did targeted operations against the worst of the worst. But just last year, Stephen Miller, who's the president's Homeland Security Advisor and Deputy Chief of Staff, went on Fox News and said, we're setting a goal, a minimum of 3,000 arrests for ICE every day. And President Trump is going to keep pushing to get that number higher and higher. He's the Deputy Chief of Staff and Homeland Security Advisor, and he oversees immigration policy for the president. What's your response to his public quote?
Sir, there is no quotas at the Department of Homeland Security. When we do law enforcement operations, we do them on targeted enforcement, getting public safety threats off of our streets and out of our communities to protect the American people.
Thank you. And you agree that setting quotas would actually put improper pressure on law enforcement to conduct themselves in ways that might not be in the best interest of their safety or the public.
Senator, we don't have any quotas on our law enforcement
operations. Have you ever issued any guidance rejecting the use of numerical targets or quotas?
I usually put out notices on things that are impacting our operations. There's been no discussion or requirement on numerical quota targets. Therefore, there would be no need to reject them in a memo unless I feared that they were being implemented, which they're not.
Here's why I think there might be real value in your putting out a memo saying, I reject any quotas. It's not just what Stephen Miller said last May. He's reportedly, and I have many press accounts of this I can submit for the record, making conference calls, berating agency officials, threatening to fire them, threatening to fire the leadership of field offices that are in the bottom 10% of arrest numbers. I would suggest that it's this constant drive for higher numbers that has been behind a lot of what we've been seeing in terms of the failure to actually focus on the worst of the worst and targeted enforcement, and to instead do things like roving patrols and profiling. Let's move on. Steve Bannon, long an advisor to the president, one of his earliest public supporters, recently said that ICE should be deployed at the polls in the next election. will you rule out the deployment of ICE or CBP to polling places this November?
There are no plans to have ICE officers at our polling locations. And
I'm glad to hear that, but would you rule it out? Would you say it will not happen?
do you plan on illegal aliens voting in our elections, Senator?
I do not. In
Okay,
fact,
then
the
there should be
Heritage
no need to,
Foundation,
unless you plan on illegal
Madam
aliens
Secretary, the
voting.
Heritage Foundation recently concluded that over a 20-year period where they reviewed hundreds of millions, billions of voting cases, they found only a small handful of actual cases of illegals voting. So I'm concerned by your rebuttal, which suggests you may be unfamiliar with 18 U.S.C. Section 592. Are you familiar with this federal statute that relates to sending armed men to polling places?
There are no plans to send any of our law enforcement officers to
But
polling
Madam Secretary,
locations.
you're clear it would
There
be a
have been
federal
illegal
crime
aliens.
for you to do so.
There are illegal aliens that have voted, and it's been proven in the past in certain cases in certain states. We provide a program to states. I think we have 27 different states that utilize our SAVE program now to verify individuals that are eligible to vote in their elections. And as states run their election systems, we encourage them to use that to make sure they maintain their election integrity.
Madam Secretary, can you understand how when Steve Bannon says publicly, we should have ICE at the polls, and you say there are no plans, that's not enough to rule out the possibility of a violation of this long-standing federal law? Will you issue a directive that ICE and CBP should be nowhere near polling places this November?
We have no plans to have ICE officers or law enforcement at polling locations. States are responsible for running their elections, and we're giving them tools and mitigation efforts that they can utilize in order to make sure they maintain the integrity of those elections and that individuals can trust their systems to ensure that their vote counts.
Let me move on to training. I was long responsible for the second largest police agency in Delaware. I understand and recognize the critical role that training plays in keeping law enforcement officers safe, in making sure that they perform their important duties as effectively as possible, and that they understand the obligations of policing in a democracy. A whistleblower recently testified that ICE's training process is, quote, deficient, defective, and broken, raising concerns about how you cut training time in half, reducing training hours by 240, and cut out key courses on the use of force and constitutional obligations. He also testified to a culture of fear that pervades ICE and a constant effort to churn out more trained officers in order to achieve higher numbers. Your department put out a statement that the training is the same number of hours that officers have always received. So let's be clear. Is it your sworn testimony today, Madam Secretary, that training hours have not been reduced for any recruit compared to where they were, say, a year ago?
Senator, our ICE officers are trained when they come on board the department 56 days. We've changed the format of those days. Instead of 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, they now do 6 days a week, 12-hour days. We also give them 28 days of on-the-job training so they can have more hands-on experience with individuals that have served a longer period of time in law enforcement and have that experienced officer supporting them going forward. What I would say about your whistleblower is that your whistleblower came to FLETC, which is the area academy where we train over 130 different federal law enforcement agencies. He came there after we had changed our program and didn't experience how we trained our ICE officers previous to that on those 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. I don't know how he would speak to how ICE used to do that, and this individual was only detailed there for a short period of time, a few months, and was a trial attorney, not an expert
in a number of places around the country have faced protests for how they've been conducting their policing. Do you specifically train your new recruits on how to handle peaceful protesters in the context of the First Amendment and their rights?
Yes, they are trained in that. And they are annually trained and updated with legal guidance, with constitutional provisions, de-escalation techniques, in driving techniques, medical aid, intervening, use of force. All of those are things that our individual officers are trained on. What has happened?
January 22nd, you put out a press release that said enforcement and removal operations, ERO training, was 42 days. But on February 23rd, just a month later, the same day that the whistleblower testified, you issued a new press release saying it was 56 days. You seem to be making it up as you go along. Help me understand how you square those quite different numbers in terms of the total number of training days.
Our training for ICE officers is at 56 days with 28 days of on-the-job experience that they get as well. That continues their training, and their specialized training is above and beyond that as well. And we're grateful for those individuals, many of those individuals that have come and joined ICE. We had over 220,000 individuals apply to become ICE officers. We've hired approximately 12,000 of those, and many of those had previous law enforcement experience when they came to serve with us.
Last question, Madam Secretary, about Afghans. Americans fought, served, and died in Afghanistan over 20 years. Many of our service members critically relied on translators and on Afghans who served and fought alongside them. I've gotten to know a number of them who came to this country and were thoroughly vetted and were frankly heroes who had risked their lives alongside Americans. At the moment, I believe your leadership at DHS has abandoned our commitment to the Afghans who served alongside us. There are currently many trapped in a center in Qatar, and at least 150 of them are the family of current active duty U.S. military forces. It is within your power to create a process for them to seek waivers of the refugee ban so they could come into the United States. Will you consider doing so?
We'll continue to do our due diligence on vetting individuals that come into this country, especially those who came in on a refugee program, and make sure that vetting process was thorough. We found deficiencies in how the Biden administration was doing that.
Will you commit to not forcing any of them back into the waiting arms of the Taliban, who will certainly torture or kill them?
We'll continue to look at every situation and make sure they qualify for the programs to how they're laid out in statute.
Madam Secretary, as I said at the outset, it's your obligation and mine to protect our homeland and American citizens in a way that is legal, effective, humane, and constitutional. My concern is that across all the different incidents that have been spoken about today, you are failing to do so. You are failing to deliver legal, humane, effective, and constitutional protection for the American people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I got three things to do before I call on Senator Britt. First of all, Madam Secretary, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me the answer you should have given about Steve Bannon is he's not even in the administration.
Correct.
So why would he have any influence over what you're doing?
Correct.
Secondly, we're going to take a break after Britt, Blumenthal, and Schmidt. Lastly, without objection, I'd like to introduce evidence of potential human trafficking that I sent to the Biden administration as part of my unaccompanied children oversight. For over a decade, I've exposed how children in this category and the program associated with them have been subject to harm, abuse, and even sex and